at Columbia. I went to the College of New Jersey. I graduated in 2019, so I did take a gap year. And Zaid, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hey everyone, I'm Zaid Rahman. I'm from Long Island. I went to Stony Brook University for undergrad. I just graduated in May, and I'm a D1 at Columbia.
Great. So just a preference. So Michelle will be monitoring the chat during this presentation for your questions, and we will answer the questions at the end. Okay, so we're just going to start off with a quick poll. What is considered a good DAT score in your eyes?
The majority of you said above a 21. I would tend to agree that is a good DAT score, but do you need above a 21 to get into dental school? Let's go to the next slide. So here is just a chart of average DAT scores of all test takers taken in 2018, and you can see that the average DAT score is somewhere between an 18 and 19. And the average for matriculation for those who start dental school or admitted to dental school, that's between a 20 and a 21, so 20.6. So I just want to first, don't think you need to get a 24, 23 plus, because only a very select few amount of people get that high of a score. And many dental schools accept DAT scores between like an 18 and like a 21. So let's get about a little bit, what is the DAT? So it's called the Dental Admissions Test. It's a test you take before entering dental school. It's required for your application. There's 6 subsections that we'll get into. It's scored from 1 to 30. And there's also a total science score that's a composite of your biology score, your general chemistry, and your organic chemistry scores. And then finally, there's the academic average, which is like basically what people say what they got on their DAT. It's an average of all of these subcategories except for the perceptual ability test.
A little bit more about the DAT. You definitely need to take this test before applying to dental school. It is a hard requirement. This test does cost $475 to register, so it definitely is pretty expensive to take it. So we would recommend, don't just take it for the heck of it. Really be intentional with your studying and registering for the DAT. It's also offered year-round, which is really convenient, and unlike some other tests for pre-health or pre-graduate schools. And you want to probably register for this test, anywhere from like 3 to 6 months before taking it, just to make sure you have the date you want. And then you can just see, this is the breakdown of the test by section and by the amount of time. So it is a long test. It's a marathon, not a sprint. So yeah. Okay, so when should you take the DAT? So obviously, if you're in this presentation, we're assuming you haven't taken the DAT yet. So you definitely would want to take this test after taking the prereqs for Gen Chem, Orgo, and Bio. It's recommended that you take this test at least a few months before applying. I mean, sometimes you do hear of cases where you take the test like May, right before you apply. But if you can do it, the summer before applying, maybe the winter break before applying, that would probably be the best time so you're not super stressed, or in case you do need to do a retake.
So how to register for the DAT. So this is like a detailed explanation. I'll just go over briefly. And then if you are really wondering how to sign up, you could look at this slide. So first you have to create a dent pin on the American Dental Association website, which is the organization that creates the DAT. And that's the unique identifier that you use when applying for dental schools. That's how you upload your DAT score. So you make a dent pin, and eventually they'll send you an eligibility ID, where you could then go to a website called the Prometric website, and Prometric is the testing center where you take your exam. And then from there you can schedule a DAT date, and you can schedule a date from any time between anytime up to 6 months from when you register to select a date. So when you are creating your dent pin and when you're signing up for the DAT, it's going to ask you what dental schools do you want to send your score to, and you want to make sure that you check off every single school on the list, even if you don't intend on applying to that school. The reason is it's free to send your DAT score to any school while you're registering for the DAT, but if you wait until you apply, it'll cost you an additional $40 per school to send your score. So just make sure you click every school.
Okay, so we're going to go into the little bit more about each section on the DAT. So the first section we have here is math, also known as quantitative reasoning. So you're going to have 40 math problems in 45 minutes. Good news, there's no trig and very minimal geometry on the test, and it's mostly going to be stuff that you're pretty familiar with, like algebra, stats, probability, and some applied math and some word problems. This math section, although not super difficult, it can be tricky when you first start out because there are some new types of questions that you probably haven't seen before, known as quantitative comparison and data sufficiency. So definitely practice answering these types of problems, knowing what exactly they're asking for. And just to touch on the calculator given, so you are given a basic calculator on the exam on the computer, but it is keyboard enabled, at least when I took the test. So that's a really good tip. I don't think that's generally super well known knowledge. So you can use the keys to make the keyboard go faster or the calculator go faster. Next, we have reading comprehension. So you're going to be given 3 reading passages, and they're generally going to be scientific-based articles, but they're not meant for those with a lot of background in the subject. It's mainly so that you read this. It's going to determine whether you can elucidate the information being asked and answer the questions in generally a fact-based question format. There will be several interpretation questions, but that's not the majority of reading comp. And you just basically want to find a strategy that works for you because there's going to be several out there.
Now we have the natural sciences section. So this is a single section divided into 3 parts: biology, general chemistry, and organic chemistry. So for biology, it's mainly fact-based questions across a broad array of topics. Could be what you learned in your intro bio courses, maybe a little surface level material from upper level bio. But in general, these questions focus more on breadth over depth, so more superficial type questions. General chemistry, so they're both conceptual based questions and calculation based. You could, what you learn in Gen Chem 1, Gen Chem 2, and your labs is all you really need for the Gen Chem section on the DAT. There's no calculator given on this section, although there are calculations, but they won't ask you to do the math and solve for the actual answer. They'll just give you the numbers where you input into the equations and ask which question or which answer choice is correct based on that. For organic chemistry, it's a lot of naming, a lot of reaction identification, and a bit of synthesis. It's what you learn in organic chemistry 1 and a little bit of organic chemistry 2. There aren't really many arrow pushing mechanisms because it's hard to ask those type of questions in a multiple choice format. And now we have the PAT, the perceptual ability test. So this is different from any other section in that it's stuff that you really haven't seen before or you haven't really practiced in your life like directly. And we'll get into that in the next few slides.
We're just going to briefly show you each type of question that we have in the PAT, and we just want to say all these images were taken from DAT Bootcamp, which is a resource that we highly recommend. So we're just going to pass through some of these. So the first we have keyholes, and basically the object of this problem is you're given a key and you're given a shape and you have to choose which key is going to go pass directly through the keyhole that you have.
This is the sample problem. If you want to do it in your own time, you can go through it, but we're just going to go on to the next problem type.
Okay, so the next one we have is top front end, also known as TFE. This one you're given 2 out of the 3 perspectives when you're looking at a 3D object, right? So this question you're going to try and figure out what would be the 3rd perspective, and don't be alarmed if you don't, if you can't figure that out right now. It does take a lot of studying on the strategy on how to answer these questions, and there are rules that you definitely want to be aware of when answering these questions.
This is angle ranking. So this section gives you 4 angles and asks you to rank them from smallest to largest. Personally, I think this is one of the more challenging sections, even though it looks simple. because the angles can be different sizes, different orientations angled differently. And there are a lot of different strategies that you could go through. But this is one section where you really need to practice like every day for a few minutes, just so you get the, it's like almost like an eye test where you can almost recognize which angles. And this is my favorite section of the PAT, hole punching. So basically, you're given a square piece of paper. The question will fold the paper 3 times and then put a hole punch in the paper. And then it's your job to, in your mind, unfold that paper and then decide where the holes are after you unfold the paper.
So the next one we have is cube counting. This one I think is also really fun. So given the stack of cubes you have here, you have to answer a question. They might ask you how many cubes have 1 side or painted, and 2 sides, 3 sides, etc. So it can be a little bit tricky because you have to think about it in a 3D fashion and not just from what you can see in order to answer this question. And then lastly, we have pattern folding. So I also found this one to be a little bit trickier. So you're gonna be given an unfolded cardboard, as you can see on the left, and there's gonna be different shadings, whether light or dark. So when it is folded, you have to choose which of the following options would represent the folded cardboard. And don't worry if you're better at one subject or worse at another. This is really just about practice, and this is not something that you're going to have taken in undergrad before. So definitely just be sure to practice the PAT section.
So a list of useful resources for the DAT. These are commonly used resources that a lot of dental students use when they study for the DAT. First off is DAT Bootcamp. So this is an online subscription program. It is expensive. It's $500, and you can either get a 90-day or 180-day subscription depending on how much you want to pay. But this is highly recommended. I used it personally, and you could use it as your main resource studying tool because it offers video series for every subject on how to master each subject. And in addition, it has 10 practice exams for each subsection. And also, there's something called the PAT generator. So in addition to those 10 practice exams for the PAT, for example, the generator creates like unique problems, and you technically have like an unlimited question bank, so you could keep practicing new problems every day. Another thing that students use is Chad's videos. So this is a free video series on teaching you the content for organic chemistry and general chemistry. I found this extremely helpful, especially when I was just brushing up on chemistry after I finished taking it like 6 months, after like a few months. And it's a free resource. So if you don't want to commit to DA2 Bootcamp yet, this is a great way to study for the DAT beforehand. PAT Booster. So this is a PAT specific resource, and a lot of a lot of pre-dentals say that this really helps them boost their PAT score if they're having trouble. DAT Destroyer. So this is a question book. It doesn't have any content review. It's a challenge to go through these problems. They're a lot harder than what the actual DT is like. So if you find that they don't really help you, you don't have to really use it as your main studying tool. But if you like having challenging problems so that you can master the DT, you can go ahead. This is just a list of free resources in the PowerPoint that you're going to receive. You can just click on the link and then access each resource.
Okay, so next we're going to talk about the ADSES, which is the application to apply to dental school. So what should you do before applying? Some of you may have seen this slide before, but we're just going to touch on it again. You do want to be involved with your pre-dental society if your college has one. If it doesn't, maybe you can start one, or you can even join ASDA, which is American Student Dental Association, as a pre-dental student as well. And there's a lot of perks to joining. We are going to be dentists, so it's it would be really great if you could practice any perceptual skills, manual dexterity, anything that really tests your 3D skills. And it's really great to network. So personally, Zayd and I, we were both in your shoes at one point, or just last year, and we attended these pre-dental conferences when we were pre-dentals, and I also went to the Greater New York Dental Meeting twice, and there's just a lot of opportunities as a pre-dent to really expose yourself to dental school and the profession at large. Obviously, shadowing and volunteering is very important as well. Okay, so also before your application, so like we said, you want to take those prereqs for dental school, so you can see there what is listed out as generally the hard requirements for dental school, although we recommend that you check individually with each school just to make sure that you have everything you need. And then there's going to also be the personal statement, which is 4,500 characters max, and it's just asking you, why do you want to become a dentist? And this is something that you should have done, we would say, before applying. You know, it's fine to like make some edits, but this is not something you want to leave to the last minute.
And also, like we touched upon before, you want to have your letters of recommendation completed, or a committee letter or a composite letter finished, or at least in progress by the time the application opens. Like we said, every dental school is different on what they exactly require. In general, it's 2 science letter of recs and 1 letter of rec from another professor or a dentist. There's an exception. For example, Columbia, they ask for 3 science faculty or a committee letter. Stony Brook has a hard requirement in that if your school offers a committee letter, then you must get one and submit it to Stony Brook instead of the letters of rec. And then also make sure your DAT is either taken or you're scheduled to take it early in the application cycle. And again, you're going to use your DENT pin to upload your DAT score to your app.
So this is a brief overview of the application timeline. So we won't go over each one in depth here, but in general, you're going to want to apply anywhere between June and July or August. You know, if you can't get it in those what are considered early months, doesn't mean that you shouldn't apply, but definitely try to get that in earlier rather than later. December 1st is a really big day for all of us because if you had interviews prior to that, that's the first day that you can find out whether you've been accepted or not. But also, you know, don't worry if December 1st you don't get any acceptances, because it is accepted on a rolling basis. So acceptances still go out, you know, well into the spring. And then you just want to be aware of the deadline of in February, there's going to be a harsh deadline of when you can submit your application. And something we just wanted to touch upon, so obviously COVID-19 has affected all of our lives, and especially as a pre-dental student, that may have affected your application. So we know that at least with this year's application, there is a section on the ADSES asking you how COVID has affected you as a pre-dental student and applying to dental school. We don't know whether this question will be included on future applications. However, we do anticipate it just because, you know, this is all affecting you guys during an important time in undergrad.
So this is what the application looks like. This is the main portal. So when you decide to apply, you want to create an account and link it to an email that's your personal email and not your university email. You want to avoid any bias that dental faculty may have, good or bad. And then a lot of people actually create a new email just for the ADSES application so that they don't accidentally miss an email about like an interview invite or an update to your application. So yeah. Again, this is what it looks like on the main page. You can look at every single dental school, all 60 something in the US and some in Canada. And you can filter by location, program type. And if you click on the link of each school, you can see a little bit more about each school. This is the same thing as just adding school and filtering by location.
Okay, so we're going to talk next about deciding which dental schools to apply to. I just want to stress that this is one of the most important steps in the process of applying to dental school, because there's, I believe, 66 schools in the US, and at the end of the day, you're only going to be going to one dental school, and you really want to figure out which dental school is the right one for you. So obviously, just some hard things to look about is the GPA and the DAT average for each school and the prereqs required. Some things that are also really, really important to consider is the location of the dental school and the cost. Cost is something that can be a real burden to applying to dental school and an obstacle to entering. However, there are loans. If you have parental assistance, that's great, but it is, no matter what, a really expensive endeavor. And then also the program strengths and weaknesses, the facilities, the student culture, grading, just opportunities as a dental student, and then of course clinical experiences, and also your non-clinical education is really important. So below we just have some soft recommendations depending on where you feel like you are in terms of GPA, extracurriculars, DAT, and then you can just look at those to see how many schools you might want to consider applying to. And then we just want to stress that it is not worth your time or money to apply somewhere you cannot see yourself at. Don't fall into the trap. I don't know, for college applications, you might apply to like 25 schools, and I mean, you can do that in dental school, but you're really going to want to find those programs that you feel like you're going to jive best with. And then just some more about choosing a school. So once you have an interview, once you get in, you're going to want to see how the students interact with each other, the student culture, like whether it's competitive or not. How are they liking the school? Do they really talk positively about the school? Sorry, our screen kind of got, oh, there we go. Okay, and location, cost, again, and then the school's reputation. So what is that school really known for? Things like that.
And again, you have to consider the financial investment that you're putting into as a dental student in deciding where you want to go. Dental school is expensive no matter where you go. It could range from between $200,000 to $500,000, and you have to plan out in your head at least how you plan to pay for dental school. You have to see whether you could have any financial assistance from your family, or whether you're going to take out the maximum amount of loans. And most dental students do take out loans to pay for their not only their tuition but their housing costs and their personal expenses during dental school. And you want to see whether the school is worth it at that price. So you don't want to choose a school just for its name. Just make sure you could justify the cost with the education you're getting and the networking experiences, and what aligns with your career goals. Say if you want to specialize into a certain residency. And then consider your spending habits as a dental student. You want to try to live as frugally as possible, and minimize your debt coming out of school. So more about into the application. So this is where you can fill out personal information and ask stuff about family history, where you live, where you have lived in the past, and stuff like that.
So this is an interesting section on the ADSAS unique to applying to dental school. So there's going to be a section for manual dexterity, and this is your opportunity to write a little bit about what you've done in the past that requires hand-eye coordination. And the character limit is 600 characters. So here you can also, you can submit your evaluations on this page. We talked about this a bit. You can submit up to 4 letters of rec on the ADSAS or a committee letter. And here we have the experiences section. So you see there's a bunch listed here, and then you can highlight the 6 most important ones using the star function. And you want to include a description about each experience that you did. So make sure that when you're doing these experiences in undergrad, that you make a mental note, maybe write something down in a journal, and keep track of your hours.
In addition to experiences, you could list any achievements you may have received. For example, getting onto the Dean's List, being a part of an honor society. And again, you could star the ones that you think are most important and you want the school to like really see. Also, you could add any licenses you may have. Let's say you were a dental assistant and you have an RDH license, or anything. It doesn't even have to be dental related. It could be anything. It's another way to make your application stand out a little bit. You just have to make sure that when you do report your license, you also have to upload a certificate confirming that. And then here you input the personal statement. Again, the personal statement is very broad. It just asks you, why do you want to pursue a dental career? And you can talk about anything, really. The character limit is 4,500 characters. And we recommend that you have your personal statement at least a substantial draft ready by the time the application cycle opens. Here you can see the program material. So this is the part of the application where you fill out information specific to each school that you're applying to. So here's the home page. This is Stony Brook, for example. It shows you like a brief description of the school, links, important links that you may need to access to understand like the prereqs and things like that. And on the next slide, you could see school-specific questions. And every school is different. Some are just multiple choice questions on just like filling out like information. For example, Stony Brook is asking whether you're taking any online courses that may have been used for prereqs. Other school-specific questions, NYU, for example, has a long response. They ask, why do you want to pursue dentistry at NYU? The character limit is 5,000 characters. I remember I only wrote about like 3,000. It could be as long or short as you want, as long as you get the message across. Prerequisite matching. So also in this section, you want to match each school, their prerequisites to the courses you took at undergrad. And you could select multiple courses for each prereq. For example, if someone asks for Gen Chem, you get attached Gen Chem 1, 2, and Gen Chem 1 and 2 labs. So again, you match prerequisites, and there may be also courses that are not necessarily prereqs, but they ask you to match them. If you don't have those courses, it's okay. You don't have to fill anything in. But if you do, for example, upper level biology, you could add whatever fits.
So once you get ready to actually submit your application, you can see here, you can either submit them all at the same time or individually, and then that little green bar will tell you where you are along that process. So keep in mind the cost of applying. So it's going to be $259 for the first school that you apply to, and then an additional $112 for each school. And then some schools might require a secondary application fee as well. You do want to check that the school has actually received your application. You know, sometimes there are cases, so for some reason that they don't, but everything should reflect on your ASAS portal. And then including secondary fees, there should be approximately about $200 additional fee per school that you have an interview at. So, you know, if you're going to travel across the country, obviously that's going to be more expensive than going somewhere local, but you do want to keep in mind costs for travel, housing, and food. And then here you can see once you submit your applications, this is the status of all the schools. You can see your application status, whether it's been verified or not, and then your decision status. So this is pretty later down in the cycle, but in the beginning it'll say submitted, review, interview offered, things like that.
So now we're going to go over what you can and can't do after you submit your ATAS application. So you can have additional letters of rec uploaded to the application to be sent to schools. You could update your transcript during specific transcript update periods. Let's say you took a summer course or you took courses in the fall and you want to update that after the fall semester. If you're taking the DAT after you apply, you could add a new DAT score. And you could add more schools to the application and submit to different schools. So when you apply to the ASAS application, you can submit to like 1 or 2 schools, and then later on, if you decide you want to apply to more, you could apply to different schools. You don't have to send them all at the same time. You could add any new experiences that you may have, but you can't edit any experiences or achievements that you've already written about. You can't edit your personal statement or the answers to the program materials for school-specific questions. And again, here is a secondary application. This is not a part of the ADSAS. This is sent from each school individually, usually by email. They'll usually send you a follow-up mail between like 1 to 4 weeks after you submit your ADSAS app. Usually it'll say application received or please fill out the secondary application. For most schools, it's just a secondary fee. They just want more money, I guess. It's between $50 and $100 depending on the school. For a few schools, for example, UPenn, UNC, and Harvard, they do have an actual a secondary application where you answer a few short response essays on specific questions. For example, describe a time when you're in an ethical dilemma, describe some type of personal, interpersonal skills that you've developed, things like that. This is just an example of an application received email you received from a school. I submitted my app, I think like August 12th, and then 5 days later, August 17th, Studerwick sent me an email. We received your app. If you haven't paid your secondary fee, please do so here.
So again, we just want to go over a brief submission timeline. So like we said earlier, June and July, that's the best time to submit your application. You know, August is okay. Zaid and I think we both submitted in August and it worked out okay, but you know, maybe past September, you maybe want to reconsider how strong your application is and whether it's a good time for you to still apply. And then interview season is going to start August to March, and you're going to get that interview invite via email or phone, so you definitely want to keep good tabs on those. And then your notification of your acceptance, waitlist or denial will begin starting in December. And don't worry if you are waitlisted, because waitlist call-offs occur all throughout the spring and even into the summer. And then in August, dental school will begin. And then finally, so again, we just really want to stress to you, please check your emails when you're applying. We've heard one too many horror stories of students getting an interview invite to their email, going to the spam folder, and they never knew. And ultimately that responsibility comes on you. So make sure you check those emails, check your missed phone calls. You know, I never really answer phone calls that I don't know who they're from, but I did during that year. And then again, you can always contact your admissions representatives if you have any questions or specific updates. However, you know, you don't really want to bother them at the same time. And then something interesting that we wanted to add is that you could send a letter of interest or letter of intent to your top choice school. So this is generally sent after interviewing. This is saying to the school, if I get in here, I will go to this school, no matter what. No matter what other schools accept me. So we highly recommend you only send this to one school. Don't send this to multiple. And this is really, you know, an intentional thing that you'd be doing. Okay, so thank you so much, everyone. I know this was kind of quick. We breezed through a lot of information, but you guys will be receiving the recording, and we do want to get to any questions that you may have, as well as the giveaway. And our contact info is listed above or on the slide, and both of our emails are there. And I also have a dental Instagram that you feel free to follow if you want to follow along.
Thanks so much, Jess and Zaid. There were a few questions in the chat, so I'm going to read those off in the order that they came in. And then if you have any further questions, you can put your name and you can unmute yourself, or just put the question in the chat. We have about 12 minutes. So the first question is, what is an instance when you would consider retaking the DAT other than getting a low AA? Are there any specific cutoff scores or subjects you would emphasize doing well on?
So other than a low AA, there are some schools do have a cutoff. Sometimes it's a 16, sometimes it's a 17 for a specific section. I know sometimes schools are a little more lenient on the PAT section. It's different for every school, and they'll have it on their website what their cutoffs are. Some schools don't have a cutoff. They'll say submit what you have, and then yeah, a lot of times you could talk to a representative at the school and talk about your score and see what they have to say.
Next question, what if we take a prereq course that we'll be taking in the fall after we apply?
So for most schools, the vast majority of schools, you just have to complete your prerequisites by the time you graduate. So you could apply, and then on your ADSAS application, there's a section where you could report courses that you will be taking during your senior year. I know the one exception is that Stony Brook requires that you have all your prereqs before you apply. And if you apply beforehand, they won't look at your application until that grade is submitted. for the vast majority, they'll let you finish your prereqs after you apply.
So for schools such as Columbia that require 3 science faculty without a committee letter, should you still aim for 3 science faculty within your committee letter, or can you go by your committee's requirements? For example, my committee only requires 2 science.
Yes, so Columbia is a little bit weird in that it does really like to see science recommendation letters. I also had a committee letter, and I still submitted 3 science faculty letters. My committee, I kind of prefer the fact that we have committee letters because you can kind of get in more letters of rec that way sometimes. So I was able to submit like 5 or 6 letters to my committee, and they included them all. But I would really try, if you really want to apply to Columbia, try to get as many as you can to fit that 3 requirement. You could also consider submitting it externally, but if you have the committee letter, I would include it.
Great. The next question is, would you say for someone who could possibly study abroad for a full year to wait another year until prepared to apply for dental schools to work on obtaining a stronger application, connecting, getting a good DAT score, and letter of recommendation?
I would say enjoy your time while you're studying abroad. I want you to spend that time, that 1 year, doing whatever you want, because that's what you're doing abroad. You're getting new experience, exploring. So I wouldn't focus too heavy on studying for the DAT, because then you're just going to be trapped in wherever you're living, and you're not going to enjoy the time you're abroad. If you can do certain things like lightly study, maybe do a little bit of PAT practice, so that whenever you come back to the States, you'll have a little bit of a stronger foundation. You could do that. And then maybe if you're doing a full year abroad, it would be a better idea to wait another year to apply, just so you can build all your experiences like shadowing and volunteering.
Great. 8 minutes left. So would sports like hockey be a good thing to add to the manual dexterity section, or would that not technically be considered manual dexterity?
I think the manual dexterity section is very broad. You could include anything you want. As long as it includes your hands, it doesn't have to be specific finger type things. Like I included basketball, I included playing the trombone for 8 or 9 years, and I've included video games playing. And they're not all specific like super hands-on, but as long as you're like, there's some hand-eye coordination to hockey, so definitely I would include it. And think of anything else you may have. Maybe it's cooking skills, or you like to do some painting or model building. See if you could think of things that you have been doing throughout your life that haven't really formally considered as manual dexterity.
Great. And then this was a popular question that I think Kyle answered, but if we AP out of bio, will dental schools accept that credit, and how would you match that in your application?
I could go through it, yeah. I mean, it depends on most schools. They'll say on their website whether they accept AP credit. I know I applied to most schools in the Northeast, all the District 2 schools. I think they do accept AP credit because they took it from my Gen Chem. And then on the ATSAS application, when you input your transcripts, you have to make sure that your college transcript includes some AP credit specific to bio, and then you report that as it's written on your transcript. And then afterwards, ATSAS will ask you, are any of these courses AP credits or test credits? And then you could select that course.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I think you just have to be very careful and go to the school's website, because when I read that question, I just quickly searched it up, and like I went on Harvard's website and they said that they strongly don't recommend doing AP credit for the required science prereqs, but they would accept it for like in English or something else. But since the question was specifically about bio, and then I looked at Boston University and they say they do not accept advanced placement credit for biology or chemistry. So those are just the 2 that I quickly looked up, but just make sure you check with the school before, because obviously if not, you would have to plan to take that course at a accredited college.
Thanks for clarifying that, Kyle. That's helpful. A few more questions. If we add more things as we go along the application, does it affect how a dental school sees us? I can take that. I'm going to say no. I think if you add more leadership opportunities, you add more clubs that you're involved in, I think that's a great thing. Continue adding your application, because a lot of things happen senior year while you're in the middle of applying.
Yeah, just be aware you really can't edit that section though. So whatever you have, there's what you have. That we would recommend, only updating the grades aspect of your thing, and if you had to retake the DAT, something like that.
Maliha.
Hi. Okay, so I have two questions, if that's okay. So in your undergrad career, you guys that were applying to dental school, what did your schedule look like when you were studying for the DATs?
When I took the DAT, I kind of broke it up into two different sections of studying. So I took it at a time where I knew I would not be busy, and that was the summer between my sophomore and junior year. I tried to make sure I wasn't really working too much, and that I have several days where I could just spend that day studying for the DAT. So that was about 8 weeks. And honestly, I didn't study so intently during that time. So I also took a break during the fall semester, and then during the winter, where I had no responsibility. I just spent 8 hours a day, 6 days a week studying, and made sure I didn't have too many distractions going on. I didn't want to be taking too many courses at that time or working too many hours.
Yeah, so I kind of did it on one extreme. I studied for about 4 weeks. One time, one shot. I was really determined. I put the work in that I needed to get the score that I wanted. Don't get me wrong, I was really stressed out during that time. But I generally hear it's either you're in my camp where you really bang it out. I would say it also helped that I had a really strong science background. And then I also know, on DAT Bootcamp, they're going to recommend a 10-week schedule, and that's really, really great as well. And I would say that's a really good pace, but you're generally going to be doing that when you also have class and work and things like that. So you definitely want to think about the responsibilities you have, how much you need to study, and the resources that you're going to use.
Awesome, thank you. So for my second question, I saw that you guys said if you consider yourself a strong, good, or weaker applicant, apply to this number of schools. I was just wondering what you guys would consider, what a strong, what a good, and what a weaker applicant would be.
I would say a strong applicant is someone whose DAT and GPA fall within or above the averages for each school that you're looking at. In terms of extracurriculars, if you have some type of leadership opportunity, that is very big. If you're president of the club, secretary, treasurer, whatever, you don't have to do all of these things that I'm on the list, but if you could check a number of boxes, that'd be a big plus. If you do a lot of volunteering, if you're involved with the community, if you do research, even if you don't submit or have a published paper, if you just go to a poster presentation and have some substantial meaning to your work other than doing basic lab work, that's also very positively seen.
Thank you so much. That's helpful.
Natalie.
Hi. Would you recommend doing research in the summertime, or if during any time during your undergrad?
For sure. There's going to be certain schools that are more interested in seeing research experience than others. So I wouldn't say it's not a requirement for dental school applications. However, it only helps. And especially if you're really interested in it, there's always a lot of opportunities in dental school, but don't do it if you hate research.
It's true. Dylan.
Hello?
Yeah.
Oh, I believe my question, should I send my question again in the chat, or should I?
If it was answered, should we go into them?
Yeah.
I believe the question was answered.
Okay, can you tell us the question?
The question was if I was going to take a full year studying abroad, would I have to possibly wait another year to prepare, have a better application and having better connections and just having a better letter recommendation?
So I think Jess did talk about that earlier.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect, great. So we'll move on. We have 1 minute left. Ibrahim.
Hey, so I had a quick question. So going back to getting experience during COVID, if you couldn't get an opportunity because it was very hard for me, could you show your interest or what you did in other ways, such as watching, like being like really involved in like dental like YouTube videos, or just being like kind of like absorbed in the whole like subject of dentistry, whether that be like practicing your manual dexterity or whatever, instead of actually doing shadowing if you weren't able to do it.
Yeah, that's it. I really feel for you guys. It was so much easier to get a shadowing experience, you know, when we were pre-dental students than it is right now. However, I do know that dental offices are, you know, getting back into the flow of things. So I would really just put as many feelers out there as you can. You know, offering to maybe supply your own PPE, or doing maybe even a virtual thing, or just having a conversation with a dentist. You can listen to dental podcasts. You can look on ASDA's website, see what they're involved with. There's a lot of ways to learn about dentistry, and that's the goal of shadowing. It's not so that you can just write down how many hours you have. It's so that you can really learn what the field is about. And obviously shadowing is a great way to do that, but there are definitely other ways. But I would still try and reach out to as many dentists as possible to shadow.
Yeah, for sure. Thank
I
you.
know during like the COVID times, like there have been a lot of dental talks with dental professionals through Zoom, and
Yeah.
as advertises a lot of them, if you're able to attend those, you would definitely be able to put that in an AdSense application that I attended this talk from Dr. blah 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 about endodontics and his practice, and they'll know, dental schools will see that this kid is really interested in the field of dentistry, and he wants to be involved involved in the field.
Okay, thank you guys all so much for your questions. I'm sorry we won't be able to get to the last few, but Jess and Zaid have put their contact information up. You also have the general pre-dental email. So I'm going to quickly announce that the winner of the DAT Bootcamp Pro raffle is Aisha. And the winner of the Amazon raffle is Sneha. So we will be sending via email after this event those details. So congrats to our raffle winners. What I need you guys to do now, you have about a 3-minute break. If you did not receive the email from me that you are signed up for a mock interview, you need to leave this Zoom and join the other Zoom. I will be checking and I will be removing people. But yeah, so take the next 3 minutes, use the bathroom, get some coffee, whatever you need. For our mock interviewers who are already on the line, thank you so much for being here. And we will get started in just a few minutes.